Service. Hey everyone, welcome to Chef Sense. I'm your host, Chef Massey. So today on the podcast, we have Dr. Marion Nestle. She is Paulette Goddard Professor of Nutrition, Food Studies in Public Health. She holds her emeritus status also at New York University in the department, which she chaired from 1988 to 2003. She retired in 2017, but she also has earned her PhD in molecular biology and an MPH in public health and nutrition from the University of California, Berkeley. She has been an author, a co-author, and a co-editor of 15 books total. She has been named among the top 10 in health and science by Time Magazine, Science Magazine, and The Guardian. Very excited to have her on. There's some of these books that I have used over my time as a piece of, inspiration and knowledge and more understanding of our big food system here in the United States. Food politics is one of my favorites, along with soda politics. Her most recent was her memoir that she did, which was Slow Cooked. And I believe she is also working on another one for 2025, which is a revised edition of What to Eat. All right. So thank you, Dr. Nestle, for joining us here.
Well, thank you.
Can you share with us your beginning? What drew you into the field of food nutrition?
I got handed a nutrition course to teach. As I've often said, it was like falling in love. It was, I had been teaching cell and molecular biology, which is extremely, it's interesting, but it's extremely abstract. Students have to work very hard to relate to it because you can't see it, taste it, feel it. You have to deduce everything that happens from the kinds of experimental results that you get. And here I was being handed a nutrition course that was about food and about politics and about history and about anthropology, and everybody eats. And students related to it very, very strongly. And I thought it was the best way of teaching biology that you could ever think of. It was just a fabulous way to teach biology. You could teach about the composition of food, what happens to it in the body, what happens to each of its components in the body, how food is related to health, and then how food is related to absolutely everything else in society, which it is. After Brandeis, I went to the University of California, San Francisco for 10 years, and I was teaching nutrition to medical students. When that all fell apart, which it did quite dramatically, something I discuss in my most recent book, which was a memoir, Slow Cooked. I had to retrain myself, and I went to public health school in public health nutrition. And as a result of the work that I did in public health school, I was able to get a job in the federal government in the Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, editing the Surgeon General's report on nutrition and health, which came out in 1988. This is really a long time ago. So I worked for the government for 2 years during the Reagan administration, amusingly enough, and then went from there to NYU, where I've been ever since, living happily ever after. So I retired officially in 2017, but I've kept my office and I'm still going into the office and hanging around. I'm still hanging.
What an honor and a great opportunity, to keep your,
I'll say.
Nice.
It is. It really is.
As we kind of dive into this, in the sense of our food history that we've kind of gone along in the United States, can you discuss some points for you and became that voice of concern and hopeful redirect on working the system?
Yeah, I tell this story in the memoir too, which was that when I had been at NYU for a couple of years, I got invited to speak at a meeting in Washington at NIH, actually at the National Cancer Institute. And it was a meeting on behavioral causes of cancer. Mostly the speakers were talking about smoking and lung cancer. And then there were a couple of us who were talking about diet. And it was kind of an amazing experience because I knew that smoking caused lung cancer. I really did. I really did know that. But I had never heard the people who were actively involved in anti-smoking advocacy speak about it before. And one after another of these speakers showed slides of cigarette marketing. This was the days of Joe Camel, advertising that was clearly aimed at young boys.
Mm-hmm.
And they showed slide after slide after slide of cigarette marketing all over the world, everywhere you could think of. Joe
Right.
Camel was absolutely everywhere. It was
Right.
kind of astonishing. It was ubiquitous.
Right.
And, I knew that cigarette companies were marketing to teenage boys, but I'd never paid any attention to it.
Okay.
And what this did was it got my attention
Mm.
because, in particular, there was one talk, absolutely memorable, of cigarette marketing to children.
Okay.
And
Wow.
again, I knew that this was going on, but I'd
Yep.
never paid any attention to it. And here they were showing pictures of Joe Camel
Mm.
in sports arenas, near schools, in places where kids hang out. I mean, it was kind of amazing. And it was like a revelation to me. And I walked out of that meeting saying to the other food speaker, we should be doing exactly this.
Mm.
Coca-Cola.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
and it was just this revelation. And so after that, I started when I was traveling, I would take pictures of Coke and Pepsi ads, McDonald's ads, um, chicken ads, whatever. I took pictures of food marketing everywhere I went,
Mm.
quite a collection of them, and started paying attention to how food companies were marketing, particularly to children.
Yep.
Um, and then in the 1990s, I was going to meetings on childhood obesity.
Mm-hmm.
Childhood obesity was being recognized as a increasing problem. And I
Mm-hmm.
would go to these meetings, and every single speaker at the meetings would say something like, how are we going to teach mothers how to feed their kids better?
Mm.
And I thought, why is this a mom problem? Why isn't every single speaker saying, how are we going to stop food companies from marketing junk foods to our kids
Right.
in ways that are absolutely insidious?
Right.
And so that kind of was what got me started on this. I started writing articles about these kinds of things. And eventually I had enough articles, so I thought I could put them into a book. And that was the genesis of Food Politics, which came out in 2002.
Okay. And which is an amazing book. You talk about so much in there, and I think, like you're saying, it's a multifaceted machine that we're dealing with on a very complex, large scale. It seems to be very interweaved between, food and marketing to, like children, in the schools and catching a hold of that and them bringing it home to the parents and influencing the parents at home. I mean, that's pretty startling.
Well, what you want to do, I mean, I'm always saying this. You need to understand that food companies are not social service agencies. They're not public health agencies. They're businesses. They're
Right.
businesses which, in our present business environment, requires them to put stockholder interests above all other considerations. And once you understand that and get your head around it, everything they do makes sense,
Sure.
because
Sure.
they're just trying to protect their products and promote sales of their products and keep government agencies from doing anything that might reduce sales of their products. And so, of course, they're going to go after children. Why wouldn't they? If they can get
Right.
kids to ask their parents to buy their product, they've got to win.
Right. And the other thing too that I think I've heard you mention is once they hook that child in the school system, they could have them for a lifetime potentially.
Yeah, I mean, people love what they ate as kids.
Right. We have food
Every,
memories.
everybody does.
Right.
And, I mean, you could certainly change your diet later on as an adult, and lots of people do when
Hmm.
they realize that they're eating a lot of junk food and shouldn't. Um, or if they start gaining weight and want to do something about that. But I think from the standpoint of food companies, kids are fair game. And, I tell this story too, where
Yep.
when Michelle Obama was in the White House, I went to a meeting that she ran on marketing, food marketing to kids. And there were a lot of representatives of food companies there. And after all the speeches, which were quite eloquent, we broke up into smaller groups. And in the group that I was in, there was a high level official of a food company, unnamed mainly because I can't remember which one it was. But
Mm.
and we're not supposed to talk about it anyway, so it's just as well.
Right.
But he said, he said, I wish we didn't have to market to kids. I
Hmm.
don't think it's the right thing to do. I wish we could stop, but our stockholders won't let us.
Okay. Right.
And I had never heard it stated quite so baldly.
Right.
I had deduced this. And I really thought in writing food politics that I was just stating the obvious, that
Right.
anybody who was looking could have seen it. It never occurred to me that I was creating a groundbreaking book or cutting edge or anything like that. I thought I was stating the obvious, but it must have been good timing.
Oh yeah, and it's very enlightening on that side of it. In looking at food addiction and obesity, I mean, those are hand in hand. I mean, it's pretty prevalent in our country and with the system, you know?
Oh, pretty prevalent is an
Yeah,
understatement.
yeah, yeah.
70%, 70. More than 2/3 of
R-
Americans are overweight or obese. 42% meet criteria for obesity, but 70% of American adults are overweight and 20 or 30% of kids.
Right.
So it's become normal. That's normal in our society. If you look at pictures of classes, school classes now, as
Right.
compared to school kids 20 or 30 years ago, there's just no comparison. Kids
Well,
are
and
much bigger now.
right, and the other thing is also the food engineering, that these companies do. They invest in, trying to hit those markers that attract people to the food and continue consumption, right? I
It's
mean,
called the bliss point.
okay.
It's the point at which you can't stop eating it. It's just so good, you can't stop.
The point of no return.
The point of no return. And we now have a specific name for this category of products. They're called ultra processed.
Hmm.
Um, and there is now, I don't know, more than 1,000 studies that link ultra processed foods to poor health. And there's even one very, very well controlled clinical trial that shows that ultra processed foods induce people to eat more of them.
Yep.
That's where the addiction comes in, if it's addiction. But you just can't stop eating them. And these are deliberately formulated
Hmm.
to encourage people not to stop eating them, to eat as much
Right.
of them as they possibly can, regardless of the consequences, because these are among the most highly profitable products in the
Right.
supermarket.
Right. Even down to supermarkets, they've done a great job of how they organize their store. It's
Mhm.
not like when you're checking out, you've got celery sticks and carrot sticks and blue cheese dressing. You're wrapped with candies, caffeine drinks, and everything. You've
Yeah, and companies pay a fortune to place their products at exactly that spot.
right. And that's
So
just unbelievable.
it's one of the ways that supermarkets make money, is through what are called slotting fees, which are payments that companies make to place their products where they can be most easily seen.
Hmm.
Because the supermarket rule is the more you see a product, the more you are likely to buy it.
Right. Exactly.
Which is why drinks are everywhere. Drinks are enormously profitable. I don't
Right.
know whatever happened to tap water, but
Yeah. You're right.
drinks are enormously profitable. And if you go into a store and look at the amount of supermarket real estate devoted to drinks, it's absolutely vast.
Well, and there's also, you have your book Soda Politics too, which that, going into beverage, that soda, that's huge.
Right. Although I'm doing a new edition of my book, What to Eat, which came out in 2006. And this new edition will come out in 2025. But 20 years later, it's Waters. more
Hmm.
sugar sweetened beverages. The amount of sugar sweetened beverages is declining, and that people are consuming is going down, and waters are being substituted. And these waters have everything you could possibly think of,
Right.
including CBD and alcohol, but they're
Right.
mostly water, and you're paying a fortune for them.
Right. And that's, that's just tragic as well. The other question I have too, and when these companies are coming in, there is what I see as a challenge is mislabeling or kind of construing how they label their products too, all natural and some of these other things.
Well, they label them so they'll sell.
Right.
And everybody wants to buy something that's healthy. So if there's something on the label that says that the product is healthy, people are going to buy it. I
Right.
mean, I just picked up Cheerios is my current favorite product because
Right.
it used to be that Cheerios was this boring cereal that you gave little kids. uh,
Right.
because it wasn't particularly harmful and kids and it dissolved so it didn't choke little babies. But now Cheerios come in more than 20 different options. And
Right.
my current favorite is veggie Cheerios,
Oh my
which
gosh, I've never,
which
okay.
which claims to have a quarter of a cup of vegetables in each serving. And what they've done is they've taken vegetables and powdered, converted them to powder, and added the powder back.
Oh my gosh.
But if you're somebody walking down an aisle and you think, oh, I'm gonna have vegetables,
Right.
you think, oh dear.
And yeah, it's the psychological box checker, right?
Oh yeah, and it
Yeah.
absolutely works.
Right, right.
Totally works.
Wow, unbelievable. And I guess talking about Cheerios and manufacturers that may have more of global presence, when you compare it to abroad, or ingredients are much different in other countries, and they have their foot down on it, or they're better screening this. I mean, can you give advice as to why it's all about money,
It's
right?
because we're Americans.
Right.
We're exceptional Americans. We have much less stringent regulation of the food industry than other countries do, in part because the food industry is so effective at lobbying,
Hmm.
because our electoral system is so completely corrupt that corporations can give money to elect
Right.
to candidates, and then candidates are beholden to them, and they're not going to do anything that's
Right.
going to offend them. And if they try to do anything, the companies are just on them right away.
Right.
um, so nobody wants to take on the food industry.
No, not at all.
They just
Seems
anything that you
anyway.
can avoid it. So, and then we have this First Amendment stuff that it's very hard for me to believe that the founding fathers developed the First Amendment to protect the right of food companies to market to children, but
Right.
that's how our courts have been interpreting it, and that's very difficult to deal with.
That's very hard. Well, and the other thing is too, eating well, eating balanced, I mean, it's expensive.
Yeah,
You know,
that's food policy in action.
it funnels you. There's the dollar menu. It's not the dollar menu anymore, but that families can go to that they can't afford, quality foods, and
Or
those
they
are some
think, or
concerns.
they think they can't. I mean, they could, if they
Yeah.
bought foods and cooked them, they could do much better. But uh,
Hmm.
if they think that fruits and vegetables are expensive, it's because they are.
Right,
And
right,
if you look at Department of Commerce figures from 1980 to the present, these figures show very clearly that while the price of food in general has increased, the price of fruits and vegetables has increased far more than the
hmm,
price of food in general, whereas the price of ultra processed junk foods has increased much less.
right, yeah,
Federal policy.
right,
We could fix that in an instant if anybody was willing to take it on.
right, right.
But we don't have elected leaders who are willing to take that on.
That's very hard to do, especially with a system that it just seems like it's evolved, from generation to generation, it just continues to snowball into what we have today from our beginning, a long time ago, many years ago. So, how we combat that, it's It's very hard to do, and like you said, people can kind of invest in certain things. They can, for people that may have areas where they can do a home garden or they can do certain things, it's hard to try to build that in, let alone have the time to do it.
Well, I explained to parents who are having difficulties getting their kids to eat healthfully that they're fighting an entire food system on their own.
Right.
That's pretty hard to do. And the food system is big. It's more than $1.5 trillion in the United
Hmm.
States if you count restaurants and alcohol.
Right.
Um,
And
and
production.
it includes production.
I found it very interesting. You had mentioned like the production of, I don't know if that was food and beverage to what a typical nutritional intake is for somebody, like calorically.
Oh, yeah, we have twice the calories that we need as a
Right.
population. Um, food is enormously overproduced in the United States, to the extent of being twice what we need, which
Hmm.
means that there's an enormous surplus of food. And remember, the purpose of food companies is to sell that food. So they're
Right.
doing everything they possibly can to sell that food. And one of the strategies is to get people to eat more.
Right. And that comes
But
down to
it's not that
portion.
hard. It's not that hard to do.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
and again, talking about on my side being a chef, oh, I get concerned because my commitment to the person coming into my establishment, using local, knowing my farmer, knowing the food and portion size is a commitment on my end.
Mhm.
That I'm serving clean and sustainable products and kind of being that voice. Because otherwise, I don't want to shame it, but you almost kind of feel like a food drug dealer in a way because I know how to add acid, fat, sweet texture to my plates where people really they thrive off of it. And
Yeah.
not to mention some of the foods when you correlate your menu, like I think we talked about before, is food memories. You can pull people emotionally into a dining atmosphere and they're off to the races. You throw some alcohol in there and you're really winning the game,
You're really off to the races. Right. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, well, food is one of life's greatest pleasures. And
Hmm.
it's one you get to have several times a day. It's pretty great.
Oh, well, yeah, it's fantastic, of course. So there's things that, they've gotten smaller too.
Yeah, I mean, that's food companies are doing that for price reasons rather than anything else.
Concern, yeah,
But
exactly.
anything that would reduce portion size would help. I'm always saying, if there's one concept I could get across, it's that
Hmm.
larger portions have more calories.
Hmm.
It's hard to say it with a straight face, but in fact,
Yeah,
it's not intuitively obvious. And
right,
and people are eating more, and there's lots and lots of evidence that people started eating more in
right.
response to food industry marketing efforts in the 1980s and 90s.
Mm,
And we're seeing the results of that now. People are overweight.
right. Can you describe in the sense of, comparing a meal plan from what a typical American male or female would eat compared to maybe abroad, like certain countries where that balance for them is completely different? I mean, we do overeat. We eat heavier here,
Oh, I don't
right?
think there's any question about it.
Right.
People come to the United States, they can't believe the size of the portions that
Right.
they just can't believe it. I mean, I've been, okay, I don't eat so much anymore. I'm in the stage where my metabolism has really declined.
Yeah.
But I'm astounded by what goes for a single portion, even if I buy a salad.
Hmm.
If I buy a prepared salad, I can have that salad for 3 days.
Right. Yeah, they're
Oh,
massive.
because it's so big. And if I go to a restaurant, I couldn't possibly order a appetizer and an entree.
Right.
That would be far too much to eat. And if I order an entree, I'm still going to be taking some
Right.
portion of it home.
Yep.
But I just can't believe that there are
Yep.
people who eat that much. And yet I go to restaurants and I see people eating 23-ounce steaks.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Ah,
do that, but
right.
they are. And
Right.
And, a 23-ounce steak has a lot more calories than a 3-ounce one.
Yeah, exactly.
What can I say?
Oh
It's
my gosh.
proportionate.
Right, right. Well, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, and it seems so logical, and the answers seem so easy. Eat less, move more, look at the center of your plate, focus on that, have balance. And, I think with social media too, they've just food is in a whole nother realm now.
Yeah, but I mean, the idea of eat less, move more is absolutely impossible in today's food environment.
Right.
So to advise somebody to do that without giving them a lot of social support
Exactly.
is really difficult. And, I think it's essential for people to understand that they're being marketed to constantly.
Right.
Marketing is so good that they don't notice it, just like I didn't notice it.
Right.
If I didn't notice it, lots of other people didn't notice it either. And you are constantly barraged, not only by advertisements, which are easy to see, but also by much more subtle cues.
Right.
The way that supermarkets are organized, the fact that food is absolutely everywhere. The example that I just love to give is when I came to NYU in the late 1980s, there were signs all over the library saying you can't bring food in here.
Mm,
Now there are two cafes um, and vending machines everywhere, and
right.
it even looks
Right.
bookstores. Remember, I mean, you have to
Oh
be
yeah.
old to remember when bookstores wouldn't let you in
Right.
with a cup
Right.
of coffee. Now they have coffee bars or the
Right.
Starbucks inside a bookstore. That's a huge change. And that's a marketing strategy.
Right.
If food is there, you'll eat it. Clothing stores,
Yep.
I mean, it's astounding to
And
me.
you used to never be able to do that. And now you have DoorDash, have all this access that you don't even need to leave your house. And
Mhm. Yeah, the
it's
pandemic did that.
right, right. Everything's in a to-go box and it's right there for you.
Right. And, constant delivery. So it couldn't be easier. And if you're not, and if you're not cooking your own food, you really are not controlling the amount that you're eating or what's in the food or the quality of the ingredients. Uh,
Hmm.
for that, you have to do it yourself. And a lot of people find it just as easy. And because of the way the pricing goes, a lot of people have enough money to eat out all the time.
Right, right. And you're kind of buying into that system. And what's interesting too on my side that I know that you're guaranteed aware of it, but I found it coming along that a lot of the food manufacturers on the hospitality side of things, these large brand hotels and corporate systems that I used had buying programs, and they're linked right into, perks, compliance percentage, rebate percentages, where if I am compliant at 80% or higher with this large distributor and those contracts are signed,
Mhm.
then I get a kickback, not to mention a manufacturer rebate. So if I'm going to use this pork product or this major, chicken product from this huge company, so everybody's like linked into this thing.
Well, as I said, everybody's in business. This is a business.
Yeah.
And public health is not a goal of the business.
Hmm.
There are some businesses that are these B corporations, but I don't think they're very credible. I mean, I have my doubts about how well they work. But, and the World Economic Forum is always saying things like corporations have to take social values into consideration. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
this requires a big change in the way that Wall Street evaluates
Hmm.
corporate health and the effect of what is called the shareholder value movement, which started in the early 1980s and has absolutely taken over in the United States. Those effects are well documented.
Right.
That's when manufacturing moved out of the country. That's
Okay.
when everybody started using imported cheap labor. That's
Hmm.
when a lot of things happened that have been very bad for the country, I think, and
Yeah, it
bad for
shows.
the Midwest.
Right, exactly. Wow. They're not going to embrace some level of change in the sense of these, the complex ag system when they have to change their systems, the way they treat poultry and livestock, the way they, treat illnesses and how that all happens in those feedlots and everything like that. There's a huge shift all the way up that would have to take place.
Well, you would think there would be more pressure for that shift because we need to have agriculture done more sustainably. The climate change impact of the way we're producing food is much too high.
Hmm.
And these things are going to have to change. And that's not going to be easy for the companies that have been making money doing things the way they are, but they're going
No.
to have to. You just wish you had a government that would push this along a little bit more.
Right, and protect the people more, sure. Looking at foreign countries, was that in Latin America or Mexico where they were starting to actually governments were stepping in to kind of protect the people and actually put
Oh, yeah.
labeling on
Yeah, it's
warning?
all over Latin America because the countries in Latin America can see what happened in the United States, and they are terrified
Hmm.
that if their population gains weight, they're going to be dealing with type 2 diabetes at a
Hmm.
level at which they cannot afford.
Right.
They don't have the healthcare system that will take care of it. They don't have enough money for hospitalizations. They don't, I mean, the idea of dealing with that level of type 2 diabetes in the population is just absolutely terrifying. And so their public health people are trying to do preventive measures. Now, I think 8 or 10
Hmm.
countries in Latin America that have warning labels on ultra processed food products. I was in Mexico last fall. I was kind of amazed to go into a supermarket. Half the products in the supermarket have black warning labels on them
Wow.
saying, that they're high in sugar, salt, or saturated fat, or
Okay.
calories, or artificial sweeteners, or, other things that they would prefer that people not eat. And
Hmm.
so what that tells you is you can't go into a packaged food aisle and buy that stuff unless you're putting your health at risk.
Right.
And these warning labels are so obvious that even people who are illiterate or
Oh, wow.
kids who can't read or people who don't read food labels, you just see them, and
Hmm.
the education is out that you should avoid these products, and that's working to some extent.
Yeah.
But some of the countries also have restrictions on
Right.
marketing to children. um, Mex-
Wow.
Mexico has just passed a law that the foods that are sold in schools have to be levels of nutrient quality, something we've never been able to do here very well. There's a lot going on in Latin America that's very exciting.
That's great. I guess for me, here we are in the United States, and, there's a lot of pride involved and maybe some smoke screening involved over the years. And it's like we take pride in saying we're the best or, we're going to come to the rescue. And we're not really even coming to the rescue of our own food system here in our own country.
No, and we
S-
don't have a healthcare system. That's the part
yeah.
that's really alarming is
Hmm.
that we don't have a functional healthcare system so that when people develop these chronic diseases that are related to diet, not just type 2 diabetes, but heart disease and cancers and
Hmm.
more higher susceptibility to things like COVID-19
Hmm.
or mortality. I mean, it's really bad. And
Right.
you want to prevent that if you can prevent that.
They seem like they're pretty good bedfellows between
With
our food system and
the
medical,
the
you
food
know?
system, the medical system.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the sense that there are food companies that make products that make people sick, and then they
Right.
also make products to make them healthier. So they
Right.
get it both ways.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
um,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean,
Wow.
I think if you were looking ahead and saying, what do we need to do to make Americans healthier, which it seems to me would be good for everybody. Everybody would
Absolutely.
benefit for that. Then
Yeah.
you would have to completely redo the food system so that we have an agricultural system that focuses on public health rather than corporate health.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Is that politically feasible? I doubt it.
I doubt Yeah, I agree. Wow. Well, and I know as we're talking about combating this and its portion size and, flip that container over and really look at your ingredients. Do you have any other ways that people can, combat this and be a part of constructive change for themselves and
Oh,
their community?
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are thousands, literally thousands of organizations in the United States that are working on food issues.
Hmm.
And they're very easy to find. You just type in food advocacy and whatever the name is of your location,
Oh,
and they pop up. I mean, and there are really, I mean, literally thousands. And so you pick your issue and you can join organizations that are working on these issues. You can advocate yourself. You can write your congressional representatives. That really works, by the way.
oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, not that many people do it. And if people do, then they pay attention.
Right.
And I think starting at the local level is really useful
Hmm.
because you can see immediate returns, whereas trying to deal with the federal government is pretty tough these days.
Be right. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
You can join a school board, you could join a city council, you can do a lot at the local level to make sure that people have enough food, that people have healthy food,
Okay.
that
No, that's
there's an educational campaign, that school food is done well. That school food, even though there are federal rules about what can and cannot be served, the
mm,
implementation of those rules is extremely local, in my experience,
wow.
on a
Okay.
school by school basis. If you've got cooks in the school who want to make healthy food for kids, they're doing it and the kids are eating it.
Right.
But if you don't care about it, then the kids are getting junk food. It varies a lot. So
Okay.
I think there's lots that can be done at the local level,
That's great.
and it's worth doing. It's
Right. Right.
absolutely worth doing.
Okay. No, that's wonderful. Thank you for your advice on that. And I was looking at diets and different programs for people to use. How do you feel about those? I mean, as long as you stick with them and you're dedicated, they work. I mean, is that
Well, I'm of the world is divided into lumpers and splitters. I'm a lumper. I,
okay?
I have to admit it. I'm a lumper. And so for me,
Yep.
diets are so simple
Mm.
that the journalist Michael Pollan can do it in 7 words.
Wow.
Eat
Yes.
food, not too much, mostly plants. And the only thing need to know about the food part is that he means foods that are not ultra processed.
Okay.
So
Got
if
it.
you eat minimally processed, regular foods that haven't been industrially produced and with impossible lists of ingredients, if you're
Hmm.
eating real food and you're having plant foods in your diet and you're not overeating, you're
Hmm.
doing fine. You don't have to worry
Yep.
about anything else.
That's amazing. Okay. What do you think about the blue zones?
Well,
Is that
I'm in the movie, so
right? I thought I
I'm not exactly a completely objective observer.
okay.
It's fun. And what Dan Buettner found was that people are doing just eat food, not too much, mostly plants, and be physically active, and that takes care of it. Oh, and
Mm,
have a good social support system. It's
right.
what everybody's been saying for years, decades.
Yep.
You want to be healthy and live to a ripe and healthy old age. You
Mhm.
eat a reasonably healthy diet. You're physically active. You've got things to do and you've got a community. You're all set.
Yep.
You can't do any better than that. But that's all you have to do.
Right.
And for me, the eat food, not too much, mostly plants, leaves you an enormous amount of room for
Hmm.
eating delicious food. Really
Absolutely.
good food. You can have really good food and follow those principles.
Yeah, you can. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And it doesn't mean no junk food.
Hmm.
It means just minimal.
Moderation.
Yeah, well,
Proceed with caution.
we're Americans. We don't do moderation.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Looking at, everything you've done, again, I want to appreciate you and thank you so much for being really such a pivotal and huge piece to sharing our food history, and supporting and doing everything you can all your many years for change, being that voice. Thank you, Dr. Nestle, for your time.
Well, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Yeah, all right, everyone. That is a wrap. You can check us out if you like that. Subscribe. Also, the Instagram, Chef Massey. Let's keep it simple. ChefMassey.com. Have a good one. Bye for now.